Okay, imagine this for a second. You take out a payday loan just to keep a roof over your head. Sounds desperate, right? But then you realize the interest rate attached to it is a staggering 346%. Literally, 346%. It's the kind of math that practically guarantees you're going to be trapped in a vicious cycle of debt.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a recent financial audit to break down exactly how chaotic personal choices can just completely dismantle your financial stability. We're looking at a case study that reveals how bad decisions, emotional turmoil, and predatory lending create an absolute financial disaster. So let's jump in and look at the numbers.
Section 1. The gig economy illusion.
Now, there's often this massive gap between what people think they're earning in the gig economy and their actual true net income. Our subject here drives for Uber Eats and claims to make $1,000 in a good week. Sounds great, right? But wait, that is gross income. Once you set aside the recommended 30 to 40% for gas, tire wear, and general vehicle maintenance, that $1,000 week immediately plummets to just $600.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real problem, which is the time investment. To net that $600, our subject is actually working anywhere from 42 to 80 hours a week. If you do the math on that, it translates to roughly $14 an hour. Ironically, that's worse than the starting pay for a stable entry-level fast food job in their area, which, by the way, guarantees a consistent wage without putting all that insane wear and tear on your personal vehicle.
Section 2. Anatomy of predatory debt. So, when your basic income doesn't cover your living expenses, that gap usually gets plugged with high-interest borrowing, and the resulting debt map for this person is completely overwhelming. We've got a $750 payday loan for rent sitting at a ridiculous 346% APR. Get this, it charges a $150 weekly fee if the principal isn't met. Then there's another payday loan taken out for a friend at 100% APR, over $4,000 owed to a sister for unpaid utilities, and $1,200 owed to an ex-partner from a misallocated child tax credit. It is a total mess.
But the really crucial point here is understanding the brutal math behind these types of loans. If we just isolate that 100% APR payday loan, the borrowed principal was $1,970. But because of the toxic terms, the total payoff amount balloons to nearly $6,000. You literally end up paying back almost triple what you originally borrowed.
Section 3. Financing other people's problems.
Look, it's one thing to take on debt for your own survival. It is a dangerously different trap entirely to take on predatory debt on behalf of other people. That 100% APR loan we just talked about, it was actually taken out to fund a friend's attorney fees. The borrower took on massive financial risk for a friend who has absolutely no stable income due to driving anxiety, and in 3 whole months, that friend has paid back a grand total of $44, all while prioritizing Spotify subscriptions and transferring cash to their own ex. It is absolutely maddening.
And this brings us to a really critical concept: enabling. Enabling is basically giving financial support that protects someone from the consequences of their own behavior, often to the ultimate detriment of the lender. Extending financial lifelines to struggling friends might feel like you're just being a good person, but as we clearly see here, it can very quickly sink your own financial ship. Section 4. Behavioral finance and accountability.
So we've looked at the objective numbers, right? But to really understand a financial disaster like this, we have to look at the subjective personal choices driving it. Our subject claims it was not my fault. I was put in this hole, I was not putting myself in this hole. This perfectly demonstrates the severe cognitive dissonance we so often see in debt crises. It's a persistent claim of victimhood that completely separates someone's own actions from their resulting financial reality.
But let's juxtapose that excuse against the actual reality. The subject claimed they lost a stable primary income source because they just weren't able to focus on work. But the reality? They lost their car sales job because they literally spent their shifts pacing the dealership lot, glued to their phone, dealing with complex personal relationship drama and messy breakups instead of, actually speaking to customers.
And then we have this quote: "I actually do consider myself a nice guy that's just been through bad situations." This right here highlights a profound lack of accountability. It contrasts sharply against a reality of navigating multiple messy relationships, breaking promises, making chaotic financial decisions, and even tracking down exes at their new apartments. The whole narrative of being the nice guy just becomes a convenient shield against taking responsibility.
Section 5. The true cost of impulses.
When you actually look at the day-to-day spending choices, you see exactly what actively prevents debt recovery.
We've got an $1,110 rent portion, around $350 in utility debt payments, and a $369 truck payment. Just these minimum survival numbers completely overwhelm the actual net income being generated from gig work. There is literally no mathematical room for error.
Yet there's a staggering contrast here between needs and wants. Basic necessities are completely neglected. The subject is driving without car insurance, ignoring credit card minimums, and their truck is literally facing a second repossession. But at the same exact time, hundreds of dollars are being poured into discretionary impulse spending, things like vapes, fast food, and $175 a month on random subscriptions.
The specific impulse purchases tell a pretty devastating story. Fast food runs to McDonald's and Taco Bell. Constant stops at Vape City and smoke shops. Subscriptions to both PlayStation and Xbox along with Spotify and YouTube Premium. These daily, habitual choices actively drain the checking account, they trigger overdraft fees, and they guarantee that that truck payment stays unpaid.
So that brings us to the core takeaway of this entire explainer. Financial audits are often just behavioral audits in disguise. You can lay out all the spreadsheets, calculate the APRs, and map out the debts all day long. But fixing the math is completely impossible without first fixing the behavior and taking personal accountability. So, I'll leave you with this provocative thought to consider today. Where are you making excuses in your own financial life? It is incredibly easy to spot the chaos in someone else's balance sheet, but the real value comes from turning that mirror on yourself. Find the hidden costs of your own financial behaviors, stop making excuses, and take control of your numbers.